Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. My name is Sihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Remember, if you're watching this simulcast on Facebook or on YouTube, well then subscribe to the channel if it is on YouTube, and please hit that like button. Now remember, we also have a website. Find us please at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support to the show. Anything between 50 to 100 Rand a month. 75 Rand is about the average that we do per month. You'll be helping fund the work that we do. Now, with that jibber jabber out the way, let's get straight into the news. All right, to give you some feedback now on the story we covered last week, Friday, indeed covered in detail in Sunday's episode of Liberty and Friends. Boop, there we go. And of course, yesterday's episode. And that is the issue of the ongoing protests, indeed riotous behavior at times by Wits students. Yes, that's right. The Wits students are still embarking on their protest action, destroying public property on campus, disrupting classes, indeed intimidating other learners and students, rather is the word, on the campus, and indeed assaulting members of the public. Don't take my word from it. I showed you images of exactly that. That one image, for instance, of a student's bum rushing and tackling a motorcyclist off his bike in the most dangerous fashion, disrupting, as I said, traffic in and around the campus, including preventing an emergency vehicle, a firefighting truck, from getting through to get to a scene, presumably of an accident or even a fire. These students have demonstrated they have a zero regard for anybody else other than themselves as the protesting students and their entitlements as students, which of course has, as I said, driven a wedge between them and the public who they're seeking sympathy from. But don't let that and those facts get in the way of a good story, as the media has been covering this as it did during the Fees Must Fall incident, as though the students are the victims. Nonetheless, the latest in this matter, of course, is the University of Witwatersrand, the management at least of it, are definitely taking a bit of a tough stance on this issue, maybe having learnt from the Fees Must Fall days. A number of students have been issued with suspension letters given the evidence of their behavior at these various protests. And of course, the latest, of course, has been in response, the students then decided to march on the house, the residence of the Vice Chancellor. Vice Chancellor is like the CEO of universities, marching to the house of the Vice Chancellor on Sunday evening to push their demands there. Unfortunately, threats, according to Wits, were made against the Vice Chancellor's home, where his family is, that the home would be, quote, burnt down. This is, of course, according to a Wits statement, which said the following. Now, the statement issued on Sunday evening mentioned that, look, despite all of this, that they will continue with teaching and learning in a blended learning mode. This is presumably the use of online teaching in order to continue with the academic year. However, following our engagement with the SRC and further correspondence, the SRC has rejected the concessions presented today. Instead, following a mass meeting of about 200 students led by the SRC, chose to march to the Vice Chancellor's home, and some threatened to burn it down. We condemn all forms of violence and implore the students, student leaders, and all other parties to exercise maximum restraint, end of quote. Now, you've got to understand something here. That last line is actually very, very instructive. This country now has a precedent, if you will, of if there are people who lead or organizations who lead protests that become violent, either through destroying property or even assaulting and hurting and the people, that those organizations, indeed the leaders of that organization, can be held civilly liable. There is a precedent to this. Let me take you back now to about 2021, where, if you'll remember, after the EFF embarked on that illegal protest action in Brackenfell, which saw them devolve into violence and the police responding, the city of Cape Town actually sued the EFF in that particular matter. There are other incidents, of course, in the past. If we go back to case law, a protest that was held by a trade union called the Future of South African Workers. This was all the way back in 2012 against, of course, the hotel owning group Toho Sun, saw that union also being held liable, with a cost order being held against it for the damages it accrued as it protested, and indeed those protests turned violent. So this is a warning, if anything, if you're willing to take it, to the current crop of SRC leaders who are drunk at the moment on the fame and the infamy of leading their struggle. Because every youth generation wants to have a struggle of their own. Be very careful and take great responsibility in making sure that the protests that you lead are actually peaceful. They don't descend into the sort of scenes of violence that we've seen thus far, where you're intimidating other students, intimidating members of the public, including working people, the working class that you affect, you claim to be a representative of indirectly, or even assaulting members of the public. Be careful you don't find yourself in a dock being sued, not only by the university, but others, members of the public. All right, I take you to Mpumalanga now, where a story involving the EFF, yes, those stupid, asinine communist idiots that are the economic freedom fighters, while their leader in the Mpumalanga province, one Colin Sedibe, in effectively hot water in a sense, after he posted on social media brandishing a rifle. Now, here's the thing. Let me take a quick bookmark here. I love guns. I am a gun nut. I love shooting pistols, rifles, and the like, and posing myself with rifles or pictures. So that in and of itself is not the issue here. And I don't want you to be dribbled into thinking posing with guns is an issue. Don't let the gun-free SA type douchebags use this as a means of pushing their anti-gun nonsense. No, the issue isn't that Colin Sidibe of the EFF posed with a rifle. The issue rather is the caption of the tweet. The caption of the tweet. Let me read it for you, where basically he says, as he poses with this rifle, that by all means necessary or possible, we are ready, EFF South Africa. Now, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I mean, here is a political party that has 10% of the South African vote. In other words, 90% of South African voters do not vote for the EFF. And this party, this 10% party, are obviously vying to be in government. So what are they saying? That by all means necessary, including taking up arms and violence against those 90% South Africans, that they were willing to do that in order to get into power. That is the direct implication of what this idiot, Colin Sedibe, is saying. Now, let me read from a News 24 piece where they say, oh no, they suggest, because now obviously there's hot water, oh no, this is not incitement, according to the EFF. Now, the Economic Freedom Fighters has downplayed a photo of its Mpumalanga leader posing with a rifle, saying it does not constitute incitement to violence. Sedibe, who is a member of the provincial legislature, posted the photo on his Twitter account on Saturday evening with the caption, by all means necessary or possible, we are ready, EFF South Africa. Now, the post comes 2 weeks before the EFF's national shutdown on the 20th of March to protest against continuous load shedding and to call for President Cyril Ramaphosa to resign. Before I read on here, Sedibe himself was obviously called by the newspapers to get some comment on this, and listen to how this coward then basically runs away as he realizes there's a bit of hot water. Now, when News 24 reached out to Sedibe on Sunday to confirm the firearm was real and to ask what his intentions were, he immediately dismissed the questions, mumbling, "I have nothing to say." He ended the call abruptly. End of quote. Yes, of course he will. Of course he'll do exactly that, because he's a coward. And the thing about cowards, especially communist cowards, is that they're full of bluster, they're full of revolutionary talk, and they're full of a very violent rhetoric that suggests that they will achieve their goals using violence. This is how communists have always acted, so that I'm not surprised that I saw Colin Sidibe brandishing a Sega 223 semi-automatic rifle. Nice gun, nonetheless. As I said, I am a gun nut. But what I am surprised by is that he was dumb enough to put a caption like that, which effectively suggested a threat against South Africans who do not vote for the EFF, who number, of course, as I said, 90% of the voting public. You see, you've always got to go back to the numbers to remind yourself of the EFF not being as big as they project themselves to be. So what? With them not being as big as they are they now threatening us with rifles? Is that how this is going to work now? And again, this is not the first time. Remember, the leader of the douchebag EFF, Julius Malema, a douchebag himself, is himself facing charges of discharging a firearm in a crowded venue. indeed, he recklessly fired off a rifle at an event that was held by the EFF in PE. He's facing criminal charges for that as we speak. A reminder, of course, of exactly who the EFF are. I've always said this and I'll continue saying this. Communists are violent by their nature. The record of history is absolutely crystal clear on that, from Mao to Stalin to Pol Pot to any of the communist leaders who have seen in the 20th century, who have a body count of 100 million corpses plus. Communists are violent. A reminder, again, of why I always say, never trust a commie. All right, that's it for this morning's episode of Vuka Nazo, the Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button on your way out. And guys, please do me a favor, share the stream. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, just share it. Help me grow my numbers. And of course, as I said at the beginning of the show, we have a website, guys. Find us, please, at BigDaddyLiberty.com. With that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure you go to my channel to find any of my past stuff. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early once again, for another episode of Vuka Nazo.